In this video, we will be exploring the profound meaning of cemeteries, spanning from the earliest human communities to modern societies. Cemeteries are not merely places where the deceased rest eternally, but also reflections of society's beliefs about death, life, and the afterlife. The burial practices of ancient societies reveal their thoughts, beliefs, and rituals related to the universe and eternity. Now, let's embark on this journey to examine different cultures' understandings of burial, the significance of cemeteries for them, and their deep connection to their conceptions of the universe. The concept of cemeteries holds a deep meaning, from the oldest communities in human history to modern societies. The ways in which early humans buried their dead appear as rituals reflecting their beliefs about death and the afterlife, and how they envisioned the universe. Cemeteries are not just the final resting places of the dead, but also a reflection of society's beliefs about death, life, and the afterlife. Now let's begin to examine different cultures' understanding of burial, the importance of graves for these societies, and the relationship between the concept of cemeteries and society's perceptions of the universe. Graves have existed since the very early periods of human history. Traces of the first graves date back to about 100,000 years ago. During this period, both Homo sapiens and Neanderthals buried their dead and protected them. These practices suggest a belief in life after death, or a sense of respect for the deceased. Thus, for the first time, graves reveal that death is not a simple biological end, but rather suggest an idea of continuity for the deceased. Ancient Egypt is one of the civilizations where the concept of cemeteries and tombs emerged most prominently. The pyramids of the pharaohs were built as structures to ensure passage to the afterlife. For the Egyptians, the tomb was considered a gateway where the body was preserved and the soul journeyed to the other world. The fact that cemeteries held such great importance is an indication that the belief in the afterlife was strong in their understanding of the universe. In ancient Greek and Roman cultures, the impact of tombs on the social structure was also significant. The dead were considered to be in a relationship with both the gods and society. It was important to keep the memory of the deceased alive and to preserve their status in society even after their death. During this period, tombstones and sarcophagi were seen as a reflection of personal and social identity. Life after death was closely related to whether the souls of the dead were accepted by the gods, and cemeteries were a symbol of this transition. In medieval Europe, Christianity profoundly influenced the concept of cemeteries and the understanding of burial. Cemeteries were located around churches and were considered sacred places. Burying the dead in sacred ground reflects the belief that they would have easier access to the presence of God. This close relationship between cemeteries and churches shaped society's understanding of death and sacredness. In Christianity, the belief in resurrection and Judgment Day led to cemeteries being seen as a gateway to individuals' rebirth and their meeting with God. Similarly, cemeteries and graves hold an important place in Islamic culture. Muslims prefer the body to be buried directly in the ground during burial. This practice is an expression of the understanding of being created from earth and returning to earth. In Islamic cemeteries, beliefs about the deceased's return to the earth and life after death give the grave a symbolic meaning. This understanding also supports the belief that individuals exist within the cyclical nature of the universe and a divine order. Cemeteries are a tangible reflection of a society's beliefs about the universe and life after death. Society's understandings of graves and cemeteries are directly related to their views on the afterlife and the cosmic order. While pyramids or burial chambers were dedicated to sky gods or death gods in ancient cultures, cemeteries have been considered sacred spaces in Christian and Muslim cultures. The locations where cemeteries are situated, the symbols used, and the architectural structures reveal society's understanding of cosmology. For example, in some indigenous cultures, the practice of burying the dead facing the sky is based on the belief that their souls will be closer to the sky gods. Likewise, the arrangement of cemeteries as park-like, serene places in modern Western societies points to the idea that death is a natural process and a continuing part of life. Today, cemeteries are mostly important for keeping the memory of the deceased alive and for allowing families and societies to connect with the past. Modern tombstones and memorials represent individuals' identities, their contributions to society, and the importance they held for their loved ones. Cemeteries also preserve a society's cultural heritage and collective memory of the past. However, with modern urbanization and the changing social structures, the meaning and function of cemeteries have also transformed. While some societies view death as a more personal and individual matter, others still place importance on social rituals and collective commemoration ceremonies. These differences also create a significant distinction in society's conceptions of the universe and their relationships with death. Cemeteries have served as important spaces throughout human history where social and cultural identity, understanding of death and the afterlife, and beliefs about the mysterious order of the universe have converged. Throughout history, different cultures' understandings of graves and cemeteries have reflected their conceptions of death and eternity, their beliefs in the cyclical nature of the universe, and their hopes for what lies beyond life. Even though cemeteries may seem like the end of life, they are actually reflections of society's understanding of the universe and their profound search for meaning in human history. The concept of cemeteries has been an important space throughout human history, reflecting thoughts on death, life, and the afterlife. Philosophers have addressed this concept and developed profound thoughts on the meaning of death and life. Cemeteries are not just physical spaces, but also places where the beliefs and philosophical views of individuals and societies about the afterlife are embodied. Stoic philosophers, particularly Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, focused on the cyclical nature of nature in their thoughts on death and accepting death as a part of life. According to the Stoics, the transition between life and death is a result of the natural order of the universe. Epictetus emphasizes that accepting the inevitability of death is necessary for understanding life itself. According to him, the burial of the dead and the existence of cemeteries are an effort to adapt to the cycle of nature. Stoics see cemeteries as places where respect is shown to the order of the universe and as a way of facing death. As Marcus Aurelius frequently emphasizes in his work Meditations, the transience of life and the naturalness of death are connected to understanding the universe as a whole. In this context, cemeteries are places that remind us that life is fleeting, but the cyclical nature of existence and the continuity of the universal order are constant. From this perspective, cemeteries are not just places of mourning, but also places of witnessing the immutability of nature. In his work Phaedo, which he wrote about death and immortality, Plato argues that the soul, upon the death of the body, departs from the material world and journeys to the world of forms, ideas. According to Plato, while the body is mortal, the soul is immortal, and death is an opportunity for the soul to return to its true home, the world of forms. This understanding leads to the interpretation of graves and cemeteries as a transitional space where the soul's connection with the body is severed. In the Platonic view, cemeteries are not just places where the body is laid to rest, but also the point where the soul begins its eternal journey. According to Plato's theory of forms, the soul's return to the world of forms requires an awareness of the temporary and illusory nature of life. In this context, cemeteries symbolize the soul's attainment of freedom and truth, and death is seen as the individual's transition to a higher level of reality. Martin Heidegger, one of the most important philosophers of the 20th century, reflects deeply on death in his work Being and Time. According to Heidegger, death is one of the most fundamental dimensions of human existence, and it is necessary to be aware of death in order to understand the meaning of life deeply. Heidegger argues that death is a phenomenon that directs the individual to their own authentic existence and the experience of nothingness. In this context, cemeteries can be considered as spaces where individuals confront the inevitability of death and the limitations of existence. According to Heidegger, cemeteries are physical spaces that remind us of the decisive role of death in human life, and that each individual experiences a personal existential anxiety about death. Heidegger's concept of facing death shows that cemeteries are not just places for the dead, but also places where the living can become aware of death. Cemeteries are symbols for humans to confront their own mortality and the search for meaning arising from this mortality. Friedrich Nietzsche argues in his Thoughts on Death and Life that death is an obstacle to be overcome. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch represents humanity's endeavor to become a being that transcends life and death. According to him, graves and cemeteries represent humanity's fear and weakness in the face of death. However, Nietzsche emphasizes that overcoming this fear is necessary to go beyond death and live life to the fullest. According to Nietzsche, cemeteries are an expression of how humans accept and confront death. However, this confrontation also includes the endeavor to make life more meaningful and to learn to live without fear of death. Cemeteries are therefore seen both as a place of reckoning with death and as a reminder to live life more intensely and courageously. In conclusion, cemeteries are spaces where philosophers' thoughts on death and life are embodied and offer clues about how societies perceive the universe and the cosmic order. Death is one of the most fundamental questions in human history, and cemeteries, as places where these questions are reflected, reveal how life and death are interconnected, and the relationship between the cyclical nature of nature and the universe with the limited existence of humanity. When viewed through the lens of philosophy, cemeteries bear the traces of a profound journey of thought, stretching from humanity's search for meaning in the face of life's finitude.